Previously, on the Fan of History, the Neo-Assyrian Empire is dying. After a long time, the empire is going down. So, what happened in the 740s BC? Well, I'm gonna tell you. But I'm just a fan of history, not an historian, so I might be wrong. Please tell me your sources so I can learn more. To fully comprehend the situation and the glory of the dying empire, you should probably watch all the videos on this channel about the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Sarduri II is the king of Urartu. Urartu is the most powerful state in the Near East. It is in what is today Turkey and Armenia. Sarduri II is gathering allies to assault the dying Assyrian Empire, which is to his south. He just needs to take care of a little mountain business, but then it's time to slay some Assyrians. And in 749 BC, Sarduri II goes to business and defeats the Abiliani. He returns with his army to Abiliani and Iriaki. He crushes his enemies. They have a leader named Merini who submits, and he formally grasps Sarduri's knees, begging to be accepted as a vassal. And Sarduri is okay with that. I'm not really sure why these tiny mountain kingdoms revolt against Urartu all the time, but it's much like the Assyrians. They are probably not very good overlords. And the Persians will find a way to be good overlords and thus reduce the amount of rebellions, but that's in the 6th century BC. In 748 BC, Nabu-shuma iskhun dies. He's the king of Babylon. He's a Chaldean of the swamp tribes to the south. His tribe is named the Bitakuri, and he ruled Babylon between 761 and 748 BC. It's good riddance. He wasn't a very good king. The theory is that the kingship in Babylonia is hereditary, but it seldom is during this century. So, who became the king? Well, Nabonassar did, and we don't know how. He is a native Mesopotamian. That probably means he's of Sumerian stock. The Dynastic Chronicle reports the dynasty of Chaldea was terminated, but then the Dynastic Chronicle ends. So 23 years the Chaldeans, the tribes in the south, have ruled over Babylon and the country. But this begins a new era with Nabonassar. And the Babylonian Chronicle and the Ptolemaic canon begins with this guy, with Nabonassar. He will reform the calendar. There will be a lunar eclipse on February the 6th, 746 BC. And there's a list that the Babylonians keep of celestial phenomena, and it begins with this event. And we can track it through astronomy and know that this really happened. So these are very accurate dates. Nabonassar has a lot of problems then. The Chaldeans are still in the swamps and they are not ready to submit to him. The Kassites are to the east. Remember, the Kassites used to rule Babylon for 400 years, but now they have emigrated to their own kingdom of Namri. To the north it's a dying Assyrian Empire, which is always a problem for Babylon. And there are Arameans everywhere. Remember, the Arameans, when things go bad, they go into the fields, the orchards, the forests, the desert, and they just wreck stuff. But Nabonassar will survive all of this, and he will even give the throne to his son. There were 23 tablets that survive, giving proof of economic recovery during the reign of Nabonassar. So how did Nabonassar manage all this? Well, Nabonassar is going to make a deal with the devil, but we're going to talk more about that in the next episode. In 748 BC, Sarduri II goes to war again, because just like Ashur, the Assyrian god of war, Kaldi, the Urartian god of war, also demands yearly campaigns from his king. He's going to the far north this time, east of Yerevan, to the region of Lake Sildir. It's the area that's encircled by red on the map. This is the ancient region of Etiyuki, and he fights against Ruishiani under its ruler Rurashuni. And he wins! Yes, Sarduri! He also defeats King Diusini of Ikka. And then the text is partially lost, so we don't really know what happened, but we do have the rock inscription at Dash Kerpi. So there is a rock text at Dash Kerpi. The text is probably at the end of this campaign from the year 748 BC, and it commemorates the conquest of Makaltuni in the land of Ikka. Remember Ikka from the last slide. It's 2 kilometers west of Lake Sildir on the road to Ardahan, approaching the main pass into Georgia to the north. This is the most northern point ever reached by an Urartian king, and Sarduri II boasts that he took 115 camels as booty. That's a lot of camels. This suggests that he was interested in the long-distance trade, and there were journeys into the steppes to the north. But this northern journey is not the only record Sarduri II will break. In 748 BC, the Assyrian Empire lashes out from its deathbed and goes to war against Namri. It's Namar on this map, it's to the lower left. It's the kingdom of the Kassites. And the war lasts 2 years. This is the last campaign of the reign of the king Ashur-nirari V of Assyria. And we don't know anything about what happened, just that the war happened. We will look at the situation of the empire at the end of this episode. In 747 BC, Sarduri II goes east. Really east. He makes a deep thrust into Puladi against the royal city of Lubliuni. And he says he set up an inscription there, but we haven't found it. But the place has been recently identified far to the east. You can see it on the map. You see Van to the left and Lake Urmia at the bottom. So this is far into Iranian Azerbaijan. And there they have found a large city and an Urartian fortress. And Sarduri II claims that he returned laden with prisoners and booty. So he is projecting his power in every direction, north, west even, east and south. So Urartu is growing ever more powerful. In 747 BC, there is a revolt in Corinth in Greece. Corinth has been a little backwater while other city-states have risen from the Dark Age, but Corinth is now becoming a heavyweight city-state. There has been a king, and he has a clan, the Bachiadae. Sorry, I can't pronounce that. But the clan revolts against its own king, and Telestes, the king of Corinth, is usurped. So the clan decides that there should be a council made of clan members. So the clan rules as a council, and every year the clan selects a leader for the city. He's called Prutanis, and there's also Polymarchos chosen to lead the army. And Corinth is growing really big now, and it actually suffers from overpopulation, so something will need to be done, but that's going to happen in the next decade. In 746 BC, it's time for Sarduri II to go on campaign again, and this time he attacks Kumuk. He turns southeast from the center of Urartu, and now he's getting very close to the Assyrian Empire, and Kumuk has actually paid tribute to Assyria before. Kumuk is ruled by a guy called Kushatashpi, and we know of Kushatashpi from the Assyrian records, and we'll talk more about him later. Uita, Kalpa and Paralini fell to the Urartian king, and King Kushatashpi, he saw the writing on the wall and yielded and became a vassal of Urartu. And he also paid this enormous tribute, 2,000 copper shields. And all of the copper cups in the kingdom, what would they drink from after this? I don't know that. Kushatashpi is forced to join the anti-Assyrian alliance of Sarduri II. So Urartu is encroaching on Assyrian interests in the north, northwest and northeast of the empire. And there are other vassal states of Urartu who are now members of the alliance. Arpad, always a center of resistance in Syria against Assyria. Melid and Gurgum are members of the alliance, and now Kumuk. They all bow down to Sarduri II, and soon it will be time for Sarduri to take out the Assyrian Empire. All the atrocities, all those years of oppression, it will end. In 745 BC, Sarduri II decides that one war is not enough, so he goes on 2 wars. He captures the city of Dardani in Mana, that is to the east, and he violently attacks the kingdom of Eriaki in the north, taking vast numbers of prisoners, horses and cattle. And the next year, or the year after that, he attacks again. He campaigns in Kulkai and burns the royal city of Ildamusha. He also finds the time to attack Uituruki and destroys the fortress of Iriani and takes lots of booty. And all is now set. It's time for Sarduri II. And I don't care what the book says. They said that his father was the greatest king of Urartu, but this guy is the greatest king of Urartu. And now he's going to take on the Assyrians, but he can't do that until the next episode. Meanwhile, the Phoenicians are colonizing the Mediterranean. They have been traveling far and wide on the sea. We've been talking about these Phoenician colonies since the 10th century BC. Unfortunately, they are incredibly hard to date because the Phoenicians don't really occupy places. They trade in places and they live in places to trade there, but they don't leave great archaeological records. And they also wrote down everything on papyrus, and papyrus does not survive. So we can assume that the Phoenicians are probably present on all the important islands in the Mediterranean. And that would include Sicily. So Phoenicians are definitely on Sicily. They also have Carthage, but Carthage is still just one colony among many Phoenician colonies. There is a mountain kingdom in Turkey at this time. It's called Phrygia, and it's centered around the capital of Gordion. You can see Gordion on the middle of the map. And the Phrygians have been in this area for quite some time. A recent migration theory suggests that they filled the power vacuum left by the Hittite Empire after the Bronze Age collapse. And the ancient Greeks says that the Phrygians were called the Bridges when they lived in Europe, and they migrated into Turkey from Europe. This is a mysterious culture to me. It's very interesting, but they will rise to be a superpower in this century. And they have one very powerful king that, when I tell you his name, you will know him. But then they disappear again and become very weak. And it's very rare for a powerful kingdom in these times to live on the center stage for this short a time. But it looks on the map that they're right next door to Urartu. But these are mountainous lands, and it's probably a world of high peaks between them. The Phrygians are writing at this time because they learn it at the same time as the Greeks do, and it appears that they also learn it from the Phoenicians. The Greeks then. Colonization is underway. And we'll talk more about Greek colonization in the 730s. I will dedicate a whole episode in the 730s to Greek colonization. But I will have to stop mentioning details about it because it's just so massive. This is the end result you see on the map here. These are all the Greek colonies at the height of colonization. That is still a bit in the future. But we will mention a few of the colonies started at about this time. But first we have to talk about the Ninth Olympiad. It was in 744 BC, the Olympic Games every 4 years, and the Greeks count their years by the Olympiads. And in 743 BC, by this counting, the first Messenian war starts. And this is an interesting story. The dates are disputed and legendary, and it can vary about 20 to 30 years when this war actually was. But we will use the dating of Pausanias, and Pausanias says that this happened in the second year of the Ninth Olympiad, that is 743 BC. Alcmenes, one of the kings of Sparta, leads a raid on a place called Amphia in this year. Sparta is in Laconia, you can see it on the map in the Peloponnese, and Messina is right next door to the left. But there are mountains everywhere here, of course, it's not really close. And this war is insanely long, and there are 3 Messenian wars. So let's look at the cause of this fight. Well, the Spartans were Dorians, the Messenians were Achaeans, and they had been displaced by the Dorian invasion happening during the Bronze Age collapse. So they moved to Messenia, and there they have managed to survive. They're merchants, they travel the sea, they are about to colonize places if they haven't done it already. The Spartans, they look inward, they don't want to colonize. The Spartans will colonize only if they really have to. And they are warriors, they are warrior culture. Please watch the 3 videos I made on Spartan culture, because the Spartans will stick out so much when we talk about Greek history, because they are like no one else in the world. But Messenia is now growing strong, rich and powerful, and the Spartans think that Messenia will take over Laconia, the land of the Spartans. So Sparta had to act and strike first, as they will act against Athens at a much later stage. Generations will fight this war, and there are many myths and legends about this war, and I was on the fence if I would talk about this war or not, but the legends are so cool, and it introduces some of the city-states. So I decided to dedicate a whole episode to this war as well in the 730s. But the first Messenian war will go on until the 710s BC, and then we'll have 2 more Messenian wars. So this is an epic struggle. Well, remember the island of Euboea? This is the center of Greek power in this era. Mainly controlled by the city of Chalcis and the city of Old Eritrea or Lefkandi, because there are no archaeological finds at the site of the city of Eritrea from this time. So the city of Eritrea was probably located in Lefkandi. The Euboeans were the first Greeks to travel the Mediterranean, and they colonized Almina back in the 820s BC, as we have talked about. As I said, I won't mention all the colonies, but there are a few colonies I'll name here. Sankey, Sume, Regio, they are probably established in this decade, but there's one colony I want to talk a little more about. It's Cumae. It's in Italy in the Bay of Naples, and as we talked about before, there is already a Euboean colony in Pithecusa on the island to the left. Chalcis is credited as the mother city, but it was a cooperation between Chalcis and Eritrea. There also a small town called Cumae was involved, because the paired oecists, the colonizers, was Megasthenes of Chalcis and Hippocles of Cumae. This site was already inhabited, and the natives are confusingly called the Cimmerians, but they are not related to the Cimmerians of the steppes, and they are not related to Conan the Barbarian. The Cimmerians of Cumae had a tradition of oracles, and this will be a very, very important oracle site, because this site is most famous for the Cumaean Sibyl. In Roman mythology, there is an entrance to the underworld located nearby, and this is the route that Aeneas took into the underworld in the founding legend of Rome. Greeks invent the language and metric of epic. At this time, the first vase inscriptions on pottery that shows epic poetry is from the 740s BC. But we'll talk more about the epics and about Homer in the 7th century shows. In Egypt, everything is confused, as has been the case for a long time. There are many pharaohs, there are many kings, great chiefs, etc. But Lower Egypt, which is to the north, is more divided and weak than the south, because Thebes, the main city of the south, is gradually falling under Nubian influence. And the king of Kush, Piye, manages to get his sister, Amenirdis, adopted by Shepenupet, the god's wife of Amun. And I like to talk a bit about the god's wife of Amun, because this position will become very important. It's an ancient office, it's been around for many hundreds of years. And the girl that is chosen to be the next god's wife of Amun is called the divine adoratrice of Amun. The god's wife of Amun is the highest ranking priestess of the Amun cult in Thebes, and Thebes is the main center of the Amun cult, the cult of the sun god. She also has political power in Thebes, and this office is getting more and more important. Right now, or slightly before this decade, when Osokon III, remember him, I wish I could have told you a story, but at this point I'm so confused that I don't even know if he was the same guy as Osokon the High Priest or a different guy. But he at least made his daughter Shepenupet I the god's wife of Amun, and Piye, or his father, managed to make Amenirdis the divine adoratress. And this is from the tomb of Amenirdis I, the god's wife of Amun. She will be the god's wife. She'll be the god's wife after Shepenupet dies, and she will adopt Piye's daughter, who is conveniently named Shepenupet II, as her successor. But Amenirdis is the first Nubian high priestess of Thebes, and she is buried close to the mortuary temple of Ramses III at Medinet Habu. Her funerary chapel has very, very interesting pyramid texts, and they are slightly altered, and it's likely that she did this. So she seems to have been a very powerful woman holding real political power in Egypt. And if Upper Egypt is not directly controlled by Piye at this time, the power of Amenirdis shows that Thebes is at the very least under strong Nubian influence, that is, Kush either rules Thebes directly or has really strong influence in Thebes. And Thebes will be the basis of the Nubian invasion of Egypt. In 746 BC, there is a great revolt in Calah. Calah is the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Remember back in 879 BC, the greatest party of all time, Ashurnasirpal II, started this city, he raised this city up to power. And the king of Assyria, Ashurnasir V, is in the capital when this revolt happens. There are no records of the events, and we know that a guy named Pul is the governor of Calah. Shamshi-Ilu, the Tutanu, controlling most of the Assyrian armies, probably to the northwest of Calah, quite far away in Kar Shalmaneser. There is also a plague ravaging Assyria at this time. We also know that Ashurnasir V dies in this revolt. We'll talk more about this in the next episode, but still we don't really know what happened. And he has no surviving sons, so this is the end of a very, very ancient dynasty. This ancient line of Assyrian kings is one of the longest ruling dynasties of all time. And maybe, just maybe, it did not end here. They were called the Agaside dynasty, and it began with Bel-Bami back in 1700 BC. We are talking almost 1000 years of kings here, including such mighty warriors as Tiglath-Pileser I, Shalmaneser I, and Ashur-uballit I. It is possible that the dynasty wasn't really this long, and that some usurpers claimed to be of the true family and thus kept the dynasty going when it shouldn't. But we don't know of any such event, so it is likely that this dynasty goes on. But Esarhaddon himself will claim that Bel-Bami was his ancestor. But that's not really possible, right, if Ashurnasir V had no heir from the family. But enough of that. We'll look at what the Neo-Assyrian has accomplished. It's now a really, really dark time. It's the deathbed. It looks like the end of the empire. But let's look at the empire, starting with Ashur-Dan II in 912 BC. The Neo-Assyrian Empire, 166 years of ruling the Middle East. There were truly great kings. Do you remember these guys? Ashurnasirpal II, Shalmaneser III. We have tribute videos to them on the Fan of History YouTube channel. There has been conquest everywhere. It has been an organized state like the world has never seen before. There has been no state like this aggressive, this resilient. It's just unprecedented. And the army of Assyria has been more powerful than any army before it. There were yearly campaigns of terror. The Assyrians were a source of fear for a whole continent. And this might be the end of it all. The dynasty has ended. But will the empire survive? Look at this. To the south there are the Chaldeans and Babylon. To the east the Persians and the Medes are ravaging the empire together with Namri and the Kassites. The Manians also want their share of the empire. And from the north the powerful alliance led by Urartu is attacking, and it's also influencing the west. So the Syrians, the vassal states of Shalmaneser III, they haven't seen Assyrians in a while. They have stopped paying homage, and now maybe it's time to get a part of the dying empire. Plague is ravaging the empire, and now this giant revolt in Calah. And then the sources go all quiet. We lose all our sources, and we don't know anything about the year 746 BC. So sleep well, my sweet empire. Let scores of flayed heads sing thee to thy sleep. I like to do a Patreon shout out. I want to thank Aniva Ferrari, Hall, and one person who wants to remain anonymous for supporting the show. You can also support the show on patreon.com. That will help me, especially to go past 700 BC. So please follow the link in the show notes and check that out. The next episode will be 740s BC part 2. You can like the show, you can subscribe, you can check out the Facebook page, you can tweet at me, you can check out the WordPress blog, you can support the show on Patreon, and every time you give me feedback, every time I hear from you, I get encouraged. If you share and you like and you subscribe, it also encourages me to keep going. So please do so. It's so much fun doing these shows and I really want to continue. So thank you for watching.